Unlike some other sports, I think the GOAT debate is probably one of those things in MMA that's going to last for the rest of the sports history. The rest of time. There are a few guys that I think everybody throws into the mix when they're talking about the greatest of all time. These are the consensus greats of the sport. You have Johnny Bones Jones, Mighty Mouse,
After Minnie Mouse, you know, Minnie Mouse.
GSP, and Anderson Silva. Listen, these are the guys that people talk about in the greatest of all time conversation. You know, and what I want to do today is kind of give my opinion, see if I can find a way to work my way through the weeds and pick a greatest of all time. I mean, listen, no one is ever going to really be able to decide because you have eras, you have style versus style matchups. Oh, the competition wasn't good here, which I'm going to talk about a lot today. There's so many different things. I'm going to try and give my unbiased opinion on this. And yeah, let's hope all you enjoy. First off, yeah, no, we're not talking about you. First off, John Jones. John Jones was, I believe, 29-1 currently is his record. Might be 28-1. I might be lying. When I look at John Jones, there is a lot of good on the resume. He was a prolific finisher earlier in his career and early in his title reign. Youngest champion in history. I don't know if that mark is going to be beat, to be completely honest with you. You have to think about circumstance and matchups. Shogun Rua was still in his prime when he beat him. He beat the hell out of Glover Teixeira. He beat a prime Rampage Jackson. Even if you claim that prime Rampage was in Pride, we don't think about people in their primes as 24 years old. We talk about a guy like Max Holloway being in his prime, and he's 33. So I think it's unfair to talk about guys like Rampage and Jose Aldo and all these people in the same way in terms of how prime is only when you're 25 years old. You're still in your physical prime at 33. It is what it is. But yeah, he was a finisher. He was dominant. No one could hurt him in fights. He had a close fight with Alexander Gustafsson. But the thing that I want to knock John Jones for, and I want to be clear, the format of this video, each of the guys I listed, I will give an argument for them, and then I will immediately give a counter argument, and we will come to a conclusion by the end. Just to make that clear. The counter argument I would make against John Jones. Obviously, we have to talk about performance enhancing drugs. It's a very obvious thing. He took steroids. He popped 3 times, I believe twice for performance enhancing drugs. Who knows how many other kind of weird situations there were involving him in PEDs. I believe the 3rd time was for coke, so it's unrelated. But he was stripped of his title for a positive test. He was pulled from 200 because of a positive test. He was then given a no contest after KOing Daniel Cormier. USADA came in July 1st of what I believe to be 2015. These are John Jones's fight results. This is one of the guys who is considered the most active champion of all time for a long time prior to Alex Pereira. During his prime, John Jones would fight every 3-4 months. He was incredibly active and incredibly dangerous and vicious. No one could figure out his style. He was just kind of eye-poking people, but no one could figure out how to get past him. But then you look, as soon as USADA comes in, he has a very lackluster performance against Ovince St. Preux. Not dominant either. It was just kind of, he did enough. No contest for Daniel Cormier. We know what happened in the fight, so it's a little different. But we still have to consider that he was on PEDs. He beat Alexander Gustafsson. I believe that fight against Alexander Gustafsson was the last time that we saw a prime John Jones. It was a great performance from him. Gus was coming off of, I believe that he was coming off of the Teixeira win, where he dominated Glover Teixeira, KO'd him in round 5, and then proposed to his wife and never won a fight again. But Jones again had that kind of metabolite in his system situation where it's believed that he may have been taking steroids earlier in the camp. They just had worn off by the time that he got tested, so there was only a trace amount left. So there was controversy there too. That fight got moved to like Vegas or something. Then you have a couple months later, Anthony Smith, who we arguably could have lost to on a DQ, but Anthony Smith took it on the chin. He got back up. Jones dominated, but I mean, it was not an impressive performance. Again, a guy like Anthony Smith who's been finished multiple times in his career, who has quit multiple times in his career. The Lionheart nickname is ridiculous, other than citing the Glover Teixeira fight where he was just getting beaten up so bad that his teeth were falling out. You then go to July, where Thiago Santos takes him to a split decision on zero legs. John Jones completely blew out the knees of Thiago Santos within like the first 2 minutes with his stomps, which was a great tactic and it worked. But Santos had moments, man. He did actually nick John Jones a couple times with big shots. So again, not incredibly impressive there. And Thiago Santos was not top of the litter. Is that the saying? I have no clue if that's the saying. Dominic Reyes. Listen, I'm just gonna say this. Oh, apparently he's 27 or 28-1, not 29-1. I just want to say this, guys, and I want to make this clear. Dominic Reyes won the fight against John Jones. I urge any fight fan who's interested in kind of the lore to go and watch that fight. You can watch on 1.5 speed if you're trying to fry your brain, whatever else. Go and watch that fight. You explain to me convincingly how you could have possibly scored any of the first 3 rounds to John Jones. You can't. Dominic Reyes clearly won the first 3 rounds of the fight, and Jones won the final 2 pretty clearly, even if Reyes had moments in those rounds. Dominic Reyes won that fight. John Jones has, in my opinion, one career loss, and that is Dominic Reyes, not Matt Hamill. You then have him taking 3 years off to then fight Cyril Gane. And I want to say this too in defense of John Jones, because I think a lot of people shit on this win. Cyril Gane was a good win. I don't know why people pretend that Cyril Gane was like this dog shit challenger that, this guy's god awful. Oh my god. Cyril Gane, he really beat Cyril Gane. Wow, bro. Cyril Gane was legit at the time. He was coming off that win. Who did he beat? Like Spivak or something? He was coming off a win prior. Or no, it wasn't Spivak. He fought, I have no clue who he fought before that. Tuivasa was who he beat. He was a legitimate threat who went 48-47, still arguably won versus Ngannou if you wanted to do like real damage-based scoring, kind of get into the, thick of things. But that was a great win to win in 2 minutes. Who's done that to Cyril Gane, Stipe, we're not even going to talk about. I don't count that. That's just kind of a legacy padding type of fight. Just to have the name on there sounds cool. But I think the issue with John Jones, to me, is steroids, and then you look at the post-USADA resume, which was not good. Now, Mighty Mouse. Mighty Mouse had a lot of good going for him in his career. 11 consecutive title defenses. He then went to one championship in one of the worst trades in history, although it kind of worked out for both sides in a weird way. Where he won the 135 belt, he got KO'd, he won it back by KO, and then won the trilogy fight. A lot of people would consider Demetrius Johnson to be the most well-rounded fighter in UFC history. Now, there is another guy on this list who I believe we're talking about next that could also easily go in there as one of the most well-rounded in history. But to have the complete skill set means a lot, especially in a GOAT debate. Now, the knock on Demetrius Johnson. What I have on my screen right here is Demetrius Johnson's resume in his title run against Alexandre Pantoja's last 8 fights. Last 8 fights for Alexandre Pantoja. I want to go win for win here and see if we can find a clear difference in title runs and in resume. Okay. Demetrius Johnson's best win on there, in my opinion, is the Henry Cejudo knockout in the first round. To that, I will give you Alexandre Pantoja's win over Brandon Moreno when Brandon Moreno hadn't taken all the damage in Wars and he was really in his prime. He had the Figgy fights, but that was a great win. I would say that the Cejudo win is better, given the time. The Brandon Moreno was a former 2-time champ, maybe a 3-time champ actually at the time. I have no clue. But I think Cejudo legacy-wise is a greater win. That's fine. DJ gets that one. Then, after Henry Cejudo, the best win on that resume to me is probably Joseph Benavidez in that title run, and Benavidez got murked by Figgy, and he lost to a couple other random guys. I would then throw Brandon Royval in there, and he beat Brandon Royval twice for what it's worth. I would say that Brandon Royval might be a little better legacy for legacy than Joseph Benavidez. That might be a little crazy to the people that were watching in 2013 I was 7 years old. I'm not going to claim to actually know what the hype around Joseph Benavidez was at the time. But he was pretty good, man. Benavidez has a solid resume. I would say that Brandon Royval comparatively is a better win than Joseph Benavidez. But it was a knockout, so the way he won was better than what Pantoja did. We can go back and forth on this game. After that, you're all the way down to John Dodson on that resume, and I think any of the wins on that screen is better than John Dodson, other than Alex Perez and maybe Kaya Segura. So I think legacy for legacy, you even look at the current flyweight champ, his resume is very close to Demetrius Johnson. If Pantoja adds Josh Van on that resume, Josh Van is better than anybody that DJ beat during his 11 consecutive title defenses, other than Henry Cejudo. I don't think that's that crazy to say. So for me, it's all about resume. I get it. It was a weak era for 125. But DJ didn't even want to go up to 135. He wanted a ton of money to go up to 135, and he didn't even want the Dillashaw fight if Dillashaw wanted to go down to 125. There were kind of extraneous circumstances around that. Um, but to me, it's tricky with the resumes, right? Like, I don't know. You guys tell me down below if you believe that Demetrius Johnson's resume is that much better than Pantoja's currently. But it's definitely something to look at. GSP, next up on our list. GSP avenged both of his career losses. He lost to Matt Hughes, he then finished Matt Hughes. He lost to Matt Serra, he then finished Matt Serra. So he has 0 losses technically on his resume, and we'll get into the technically in a little bit. 0 holes in his game, similar to Mighty Mouse. He was a great striker, great boxer, great kickboxing, good traps on the feet. Feints were excellent. Wrestling was high level, and he didn't even grow up as a wrestler. He was a double champ in 2 weight classes, something the only guy other than GSP on this list that has that is John Jones. In only a few scary moments his entire career, kind of similar to John Jones in that sense. DJ had some losses early on, so I don't technically think of it the same way, but it is what it is. Now, the knock against GSP, the Johnny Hendricks fight, this will always be a stain on George St. Pierre's legacy. I think anybody, and I've gone back and watched this fight numerous times to score it, every single time that I have watched this fight, I have given Hendricks 1, 2, and 4. I do not understand how Tony Weeks and Sal D'Amato gave George St. Pierre round 1. That makes 0 sense. It was a close fight, I will say that, but I felt like definitively they won the rounds that they won. GSP, to me, clearly got 3 and 5, but Johnny Hendricks got 1, 2, and 4. And that should have been the end of the story. Johnny Hendricks should have been given the belt, and I bet in a rematch it would have been interesting to see if GSP could beat him. And I think that would have been great for his legacy to try and avenge another loss. Um, and ultimately, not only did all of the media score it against him, but then he retired after the fight and disappeared for a few years. Now, the saving grace within this is that Johnny Hendricks was one of the worst steroid cheats and TRT cheats of that era. Um, After USADA came in, Johnny Hendricks completely flattened out in terms of his fighting level, in terms of his power. He got finished by any competent middleweight afterwards. He had to move up to middleweight, because he could not make 170 without the testosterone anymore. So, to GSP's credit, because he left the sport because of all the steroid use, it was true that the one guy who gave him his toughest fight in his career was a steroid cheat and a bad one at that. So it's something to take into account. It's why you have to be careful when talking about John Jones's legacy too. Um, but that is something to defend him at least from the Hendricks fight. But in my opinion, that should be a 3rd loss on his resume is Johnny Hendricks. So something interesting there. Listen, I'll talk about Habib for a second because I skipped over him earlier, and I'm very against the Habib for the GOAT argument. I'm going to give a real ball knowledge-esque answer here. Khabib is like the Magic Johnson of the UFC. Not in terms of like him having AIDS, but, but mainly because Magic Johnson gets put in, and I don't know how much you guys know about basketball. A lot of people put Magic Johnson in the top 10 of all time. They say, oh, like he should be as high as number 4 because imagine what he could have done if he didn't test positive or he didn't disappear for a few years. The same issue with Habib is that he gets a lot of what if credit when people throw him in the GOAT debate. They say, oh, he retired on top. He could have won another 10 fights, but he didn't. He didn't win another 10 fights. And there's nothing wrong with the circumstances of his retirement. I think every fan should fully respect the reason that he stepped away from the sport forever. But the truth is, we cannot just credit him for that and then say, oh, well, you know what would have happened if he stuck around. Do we? Do we know what would have happened? He would have gone to 170 probably. He missed weight in the Gaethje fight. Um, would he have beat all the guys at 170? Would he have eventually fought Kamaru Usman? Would he have beat Usman? I think that would have been a fascinating matchup for him. Would he have beat? Even Bilal Muhammad was an interesting matchup for him, in my opinion. Shavkat's an interesting matchup for him. These are people that we never got to see Habib fight because he retired. And in my opinion, if there's so many questions and what ifs, you cannot be the GOAT. Now, the main reason that Habib Nurmagomedov is not the GOAT, and I'm going to explain this past all the resume stuff. Surely, if you look up right now, who is Habib Nurmagomedov's wife? What is her name? Do a quick Google search before I go to this next part. Habib Nurmagomedov, and you want me to not make fun of the Russians. His wife's last name was Nurmagomedova. That was her maiden name, Patimat Nurmagomedova.
Bitch, I'd rather die! It's my fucking kid right there!
And you want me to say that they are not all marrying and having children with their cousins. That is like the most fucking like stat pad ass last name to fucking add an A, basically. Russian last names literally just hit the fucking like he ain't do nothing but step back shit, bro. Like Nurmagomedova versus Nurmagomedov. They are cousins. You can look it up. It is insane to me, by the way, that Habib is married to his cousin. McGregor was onto something. I do not support his "your wife is a towel made" tweet, though. Probably a little culturally insensitive, but it is what it is. Obviously, it's not the main reason he's not the GOAT, but it is a fun fact because he's not really helping any of the stereotypes around some of the Dagestani guys. He did miss weight at 254. Was it 254 or was it 256? I have no clue. 254, I think. And that is interesting. Go back and watch that way, and you can see the scale is still clearly going up. He was shocked that he made the weight. He looked like death when he was weighing in. Thought he was going to grab the towel, and he didn't. But to me, it's tricky with Habib. I can't do it because of all the what ifs, and I hate that because I think he could have easily been the greatest of all time, and the circumstances suck, but there are just too many of those could have been scenarios for me to say Habib is the GOAT. So, guys, George St. Pierre is the greatest of all time. In my opinion. In my opinion, George St. Pierre is the greatest of all time, and I'm going to give you my reasons just now before I wrap this video up. I believe that you look at John Jones, I think the steroid use and the Dominic Reyes fight is a little bit of a, it hurts his legacy in the same way that Hendricks hurts GSP's legacy. But you add the steroid use, you add the way that he would cheat in all of his fights. Dirty fighter. I have a tough time saying that John Jones was really the greatest mixed martial artist of all time. Partially on the fact that he could have done more to distance himself from everybody else because he was the most skilled of all time, in my opinion. Incredibly well-rounded. He had everything except real punching power. But I think John Jones is out on the steroid use. I have a tough time. If you want to ignore that for your argument, then I 100% support you saying John Jones is the greatest of all time. For the sake of my argument, I can't ignore it. In a sport where there is drug testing, I can't get behind someone who's a steroid cheat. Then you go to Mighty Mouse. I think his resume is weak. He is a victim of circumstance and of context. I get that. If he had a stronger division, I bet he would have won a lot of those fights. But the fact of the matter is, we're not going off of what ifs. We're going off of what happened, and he had a weak resume as the champion. He is one of the greatest of all time. I cannot put him at number one because ultimately, if Pantoja beats Joshua Van in November, I would think there is a really, really good argument that he is the greatest flyweight of all time. It's very close. I think it'll be a serious discussion in the same way that a lot of people were arguing between Volk and Holloway before the third fight, and Volk and Aldo for a long time. I think you'll start to have those conversations. And then if he wins one more, then I think he's got it. Then Anderson Silva, to me, is a tricky one, primarily on the basis that when it comes to Anderson Silva, and I didn't mention him in my list of guys video, or in my list of guys, because I think that the Silva one is very easy. Um, Listen, Anderson Silva was one of the greatest, if not the greatest martial artist for a time period. Um, but ultimately, I think you have to talk about a mixed martial artist in their career. Now, he was older when he was in his prime, and it was very clear that he tried to, come back from that leg injury and prove to the world that he still had it. But the truth is, he took all that time off, and when you're not training, your body starts to realize, holy shit, I'm 41 years old. I think his body realized that, and it started to slow down, and he started not to be as fast, and he was losing fights, and he kind of took this Yoel Romero in his later parts of his career style, where he would just kind of wait for moments and hope it would do enough to win fights. Um, he was just kind of aura farming in fights sometimes. Especially go watch the Bisping fight. He easily could have won that if he wasn't trying to aura farm so far or so hard. With Anderson Silva, the lackluster post leg break resume kills a little bit of that legacy. I think if he retires after the leg break, there is a very good argument that he is the greatest of all time. In terms of his resume, which was very good, um, he would have been one of the greats, if not the greatest of all time. But I think he really tarnished his legacy. And there's another guy, Daniel Cormier, who I believe, had he retired after his win versus Derek Lewis, people would throw him in this conversation too. But the losses to John Jones are killer on his resume. So that's tricky. I think GSP is the greatest of all time on the basis, A, avenging his losses. At the end of the day, I can talk shit about Dominic Reyes, the loss, but John Jones was given the decision, so I can't use that same logic here with Hendricks. GSP was given the decision, so I can't shit on him that much for Johnny Hendricks. Um, Ultimately, Dominic Reyes is just kind of an athletic, solid fighter who never took steroids in his life. Look at his physique. Johnny Hendricks fell off a cliff in terms of his abilities to fight after USADA came in. I think that is a big thing that people need to talk about when they mention that fight. The work rate was something that Hendricks was never able to keep up after drug testing was implemented and TRT exemptions were taken away. I think GSP was a role model of an athlete for mixed martial artists too. And him coming back and beating Bisping was big. At the time, I think a lot of people thought that Bisping was going to walk right through him. And the betting odds didn't show that for the fight, but the consensus in the media during that time period was that Michael Bisping would beat George St. Pierre because he was bigger. He was already undersized for 170. And now he was just kind of fat a little bit at 185. He was bigger, but he had some body fat on him. And I think that's something that we really need to take into account for how impressive his win was at that time. Now, did he duck Robert Whitaker? Potentially. He did have the ulcerative colitis. I think that's what Brock Lesnar had too. So it's something to note. I believe that George St. Pierre's legacy is unmatched in terms of his resume as well, with all the great names on it. Um, I think GSP is the GOAT, man. I think if you look at positives versus negatives in their career, GSP fought for a long time. He beat everybody that came against him. Um, and man, I don't know. Like watching GSP fights feels like you're watching a legend. In the same way that John Jones in his prime feels like you're watching a legend. Anderson Silva, legend. DJ, legend. But there was an aura about the GSP fights going back and watching them where I was like, wow, like this is the guy. Whereas Jones, Silva, DJ, I know what happened by the end of their careers where people started to respect them a little less. DJ's different. People always love DJ. I don't mean that for DJ, but I think if he had stuck around the UFC, he would have been the greatest of all time. But it's tricky. I think GSP is the GOAT. Tell me down below if you believe that GSP is the greatest of all time or if you believe that someone else is the greatest of all time. I'll hear all arguments. If you want to throw Volkanovski in there, you want to throw Marab in there like fucking Lucas Tracy, then go ahead. Be my guest. I'd love to hear it down below. I'll reply to every single comment. I always do. It's been a little bit. I've been inconsistent. Sorry about that, but we've got things back to normal now. I'm excited to bring you guys videos in the future. Enjoy UFC Perth today, or don't. It's a dog shit card. But let's pray for Dominic Reyes' title run and resurgence. I will see you all in the next one, probably tomorrow. Peace out, ladies and gentlemen. Like, comment, and subscribe. TikTok is at Money Manziel MMA. I'll see you on there. I'll see you on YouTube Shorts, and I'll see you on YouTube in general. Peace out, boys.